All right, Owls, this is Mr. O back with the second set of flip notes for the year. This is your Matter 2 flip notes. The properties and states of matter and the how heat will affect matter is the um, content for Matter 2. And we'll do this in class, but your Matter TOC, this will be page number 13, Matter 2 flip notes. Remember, use the sheet I gave you to complete as you follow along. This one will have something on the back, so make sure you watch the entire slideshow because there's things to put on the back of your notes. And also you can stop, pause, go back as much as you want to feel comfortable with this content. And if you have any questions about something that I'm discussing, please jot them down. I'll be happy to answer them for you when we discuss the notes in class. Let's start off with the word property. I have this sneaker here. You'll realize you've been using properties in science for almost your entire life. You've been using them before you even came to school. Properties are things used to describe something. So if I looked at this shoe, I could talk about its color, its size, its shape, its texture, how the sole was, if it had cushiony bottoms, if the strings were, soft or not. Those are all different properties. So properties is a very general term, but it's simply something you use to describe something with. Now, moving on to the three properties of matter, and I put this in all caps. Do not confuse three properties of matter with the three states of matter. The most common mistake I see with students is that I'll ask for the three properties of matter, and you'll answer with solid, liquid, gas. Solid, liquid, gas is states of matter, but you use the properties of matter with them. So keep that in mind, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. The first property is mass. You can either have a definite or not have a definite mass. Next is volume. You can have definite or no definite volume. And we'll talk about definite and no definite in a little bit. And the last is shape. You can have a definite or not a definite shape. All states of matter have shape, mass, and volume. We'll talk more about this on the back of your notes. But states of matter, if it's definite or no definite, it still means they have it. But when you talk about the three general properties of matter, it's mass, volume, and shape. Now in Matter 3, we will talk about more physical properties of matter, and we'll get into more in depth about different chemical and physical properties. However, these are the general three properties of matter. Let's move on to the second part, which is the effect of heat on matter. And we're going to talk about what it does to atoms. Now, atoms will move faster and spread apart when heat is added. I refer to it as like what happens when you turn the light on. If there's a cockroach in the room, it runs and spreads out. However, if you take away heat, it will move slower and the atoms will get closer together when heat is taken away. I'll show you a picture here of solids, liquids, and gases. Okay, you can see how the atoms are tightly packed together in solids and kind of packed together in liquids and pretty spread apart in gases. Keep that in mind, like if you add heat, you can go through the next step, which would be a change in phase. So a change in phase and state of matter mean the same thing. So get comfortable with using the word phase and state interchangeably. While a change in movement of atoms can lead to a change in phase, for example, if I put a blowtorch on an ice cube, it could lead that ice cube from changing to a solid into a liquid. And I have a diagram here that shows how solids and liquids and gases and plasmas all kind of can go back and forth to each other. The scientific word that would take place, sometimes something would jump from a solid to a gas because there is no liquid form of it. Dry ice is an example of that. However, some things like water can go from ice cube to water to evaporation, and then the evaporation can come back down to a solid if it's chilled out again. So change in phase is change in state, so those two mean the same thing. State of matter. These are the things you've been learning about since first grade. They are solid, liquid, and gas. There's also plasma, and there's some other ones. However, in sixth grade, you just need to know about solid, liquid, and gas. Adding and removing heat can change the state of matter, and I use this cartoon comic to give a little humor to what would happen to that snowman if he does not give up his scarf. Now, on the back of your notes, we are going to do a couple things. First, we're going to define two different words. The first is the word definite. Like we talked about mass, volume, and shape, you can have definite or no definite. Definite means there are measurements that stay consistent, which they stay the same. For example, if you weighed your pencil, it would weigh X amount of grams. If you weighed it 10 years later, The same pencil would weigh the exact same amount of grams if it was never used. However, there's also no definite, which means measurements that may change but are still measurable. What I mean by that, if I took the shape of liquid water in a bowl, that shape would change if I changed it from a bowl to a glass. The volume would stay the same, or the shape would change, but it's still measurable, but it's not consistent, meaning depending on what thing it's in, you can measure it or not. So those are the definitions, and then underneath this, you're going to have to build a chart. The title is going to be states of matter. The first thing you're going to label is solid, liquid, and gas. Those are the 3 states of matter that we have to learn about in 6th grade. Underneath those, you have to talk about their key characteristics. Solids have 3 definites: definite shape, definite mass, and definite volume. They stay consistent. You can measure them every single time. They do not change. Liquids get a little trickier. They have a definite mass and volume, but they're no definite shape because it takes the shape of its container. And gases are just like solids, but complete opposites. They have no definite mass, shape, or volume. They are constantly changing. So the gas mass, shape, and volume will depend on where you are measuring it at that time. Now keep in mind, all 3 of them have mass, shape, and volume. It's just the ability to consistently measure them. And last, I gave you some examples just in case you had no idea of what a solid, liquid, and gas is. Solid could be a pencil or table, liquid could be water or milk, and gas could be the air you breathe or carbon dioxide that you exhale. Most common mistake I see, the gas you put in your car is not a gas. It is a liquid. Just keep that in mind. All right, that's the end of the notes. Remember to write down any questions to ask me in class. Have a good one.